Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. So how do you know that I'm right about the events that are occurring? Well, first of all, I'm the most reliable person that ever lived. In spite of the minor mistakes I've made in my videos, especially the first 7 years of the 17 years I've been making videos, I'm the most reliable. People are afraid to tell the truth. I'm not. They're afraid to lose something. They're afraid to be persecuted or have their family persecuted. I'm not. So let's look at this now. I'm going to give you 2 points that tell you why outdoor sparring has verified that I'm Christ in the end, right? After my flesh dies, people will be sealed out of heaven. This is the end. Before I do so, I want to help you understand something. People need to tell the truth about the Royal African Falcon martial art order. Long ago, there were people who established Egypt, and according to some historians, they described themselves as black god people. The black god race. Now, they weren't referring to all black people. They're referring to a grouping of black people who were martial artists, who were the early followers of Horus, what have you, who were said to be the Royal African Falcon martial art order. Now, it doesn't matter if scientists say, we found them over here, and they're white, they're Semitic, they're Asian, and that doesn't matter. Because we know beyond a reasonable doubt that the real version of it is black. Now, how do we know? Because it was Michael Jordan who was flying through the air, playing basketball. How do we know? Because it was Martin Luther King. How do we know? Because R&B singers. That's how we know. Because of the fruit. We know them by their fruit. And so it doesn't matter if the Royal African Falcon martial art order was in Nigeria or was in Egypt. This doesn't matter. We have to go based on the evidence and the objective facts. And it's an objective fact that we can't trust historians when it comes to the race of ancient peoples, because they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that they'll go the distance to fabricate evidence. And the same Eurocentric institutions that have been lying all throughout history on record it's been exposed by white people as well. Those same institutions are still around. Some are colleges, some are scientific organizations and institutions, some are publications, what have you. So anyone who's not telling the truth about the Royal African Falcon martial art order is lying about God. Anyone who thinks that the Jews are chosen is lying about God. Now, why? Well, you know them by their fruit, right? Their works, not by what a book claims. In the Bible, in Jeremiah 8, it says, the lying pen of the scribes has handled the word of God falsely. Even though it caused me to slip on the word God, so everyone sinks lower. Because I'm making this video this way, I can't kind of do it in clips. It's a long story why that is, as it was spaced on the phone and so on and so forth. So let me put this another way here. As we look for the works of God, and God is aware, Exodus 15:3, right? Judges 3. Okay, we're looking for people who are projecting the image naturally. Not after they change my video, so on and so forth, but naturally projecting the image of God's natural and ancient, right? Ancient of days, ancient and natural martial art image. We're not looking for people who left Africa, changed the way they looked, came back, and they're kind of feeble, they're kind of this, kind of nerdy, autistic. Okay, and I'm not trying to insult them at all. Okay, we're also not looking for white people or the wrong type of black people. You're looking for the type of person that is divine and holy and more sincere than Martin Luther King Jr., and that is me. That's why they're fuming and poisoning me. So I have 23 witnesses on record of the stop against me. I had the royal lineage. I had the martial art challenge. No one comes close. These are objective facts. So point number 1, mankind evolved through martial arts, through analysis and hunting, right? Hunter-gatherers initially before farming, right? For agriculture. They were doing martial arts, right? They were doing early kind of primitive war arts, and then at some point they refined them and their martial arts. A racist would say, hey, there's some black guy with a some kind of stick or something. They would say some stupid stuff, right? But in reality, these people were very smart. Okay, very smart. They were the smartest people on the planet. They're the ones who built the pyramids, not the Europeans, not the Asians. They started the empires first, which is evidence of analysis, okay, bearing fruit. The fruit of wisdom, the fruit of insight, the fruit of sense, the fruit of analysis. And martial arts, and they built it in Africa. They wanted to make sure everyone knew that it's where the black people lived that civilization came from. And only an idiot would not get that from that. Only an idiot. When you look at it as a martial arts, you know for sure that's the message. If they were from Europe, they would have built the pyramids in Europe. If they were from Asia, they would have built them there. From the Middle East, there. They said, no, we are Africans, so we're building it in Africa. Okay, that's point number one. Mankind evolved through martial arts, analysis, and hunting. You look at Romans 1, God's invisible qualities were always there. Point number two, I'm going to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to read this pretty quickly here. David versus Goliath. What exactly is said in 1 Samuel 17, verses 46, 45 through 47, and how it connects to Revelation 19 and Romans 1. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. He said, and the whole world will know that there's a God in Israel, just like in Romans 1, where it said the invisible qualities of God have been known the whole time. So he's saying this to them with the same kind of thinking as Paul in Paul's letters, saying, hey, you know the qualities of God. When you see the martial art expression of God, you'll know that there's a God in Israel. Israel. Not Israel in this world, the cult of the flesh, people, these white guys, Ethiopians, whatever, in Israel, but the Israel martial art order. The Lord is the warrior. We say in Galatians 4, right? Israel in the heavens, in the warrior heavens, right? The Skywalker, Skylock King, Skylock Core versus Israel in the world, right? The merchants, ballists, right? People who are trade route people, technological people, not martial artists. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Now, what does he mean by it's not by sword or spear? Well, let's go back earlier where it says, this day the Lord... Okay. It says, this day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, right? The hand of God, the martial art hand of God versus the mark of the beast, right? Merchants, Baal, Aditya, merchants and sailors and, and the system and so on and so forth, right? Babylon's system versus the martial arts of God, right? It says, this day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. So he's going to prove his point using martial arts, using martial art principles. He happens to use a sling, okay? But he had sticks in his hand. Goliath pointed out that he had sticks. Okay, but there were the martial art principles, right? A trajectory, okay? The Goliath having an opportunity to block him. He said, look, is he going to be able to block this strike before I cut the distance? Because he's running at him and he's supposed to sling at him. Okay, so he uses the idea of surgical strikes. Now, it's not the optimum way to prove his point, but because it barely falls in the category of martial art principles, it does the trick anyway. Because if he didn't kill them with that stone, he'd have to face him in hand-to-hand combat with sticks. And he'd pick up a rock or something because he's running toward him. And Goliath has his armor on. And he says, I'm going to use martial art principles, not technology. So what he is saying is that God can prove his point to mankind through a martial art challenge. And that's the main way God proves his point, right? The root and offspring of David, okay? And not Solomon, mind you, but David specifically, okay? What he's not saying is that, that you can't prove it with swords and spears and javelin. Okay, he's saying, to make a long story short, he's saying that you have to use the Spirit of God and not brute force and technology.